Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and Debbie Georgianni and Adam Blai will be talking all about the opposite of peace, anxiety, and how so many saints struggled with all these different forms of anxiety. It's going to be interesting to talk about, but good morning, Debbie and Adam.
Good morning, Keith. Thank you so much. We love the next right thing. And Adam and I, yes, we're prepared to talk about how a lot of saints struggled with forms of anxiety, like Saint Therese, one of the such beloved saints from all around the world. Everybody loves Saint Therese. And, you know, she had bouts of social anxiety and scrupulosity. And you look at, we just celebrated the feast of Saint Dymphna. Same thing, you know, with these scrupulosity and different fears and worries and things that may consume a person. The saints dealt with it too, and they made it. They made it to sainthood. And so it's you know, to look at the real human traits of our saints, Adam, I think is very important. And, you know, people may say, well, you know, they struggled with this, so that means that they can't be perfect. It's not about that. You know, it's about the full human experience. And that's the beauty of it, of how they rose above so many of the things that they struggled with because they had such tremendous trust in God.
Exactly, Deb. So anxiety is, I mean, it's such an important topic. Like when you think about psychology, when you think about human struggles in terms of psychology, depression and anxiety are kind of the top of the list. So commonly talked about. Everybody talks about, you know, I'm feeling depressed, or so-and-so was depressed, or I'm
worried.
anxious. I'm worried, I'm anxious.
Right.
In terms of, you know, those of us living in the world, these are the most common. And of course, there's more severe psychiatric problems that you typically see more in inpatient settings. But those of us out here in the world that are able to function, depression and anxiety are really just super common. So what are they? I think it's helpful to just think about that a little bit. So fear is, let's say I'm walking in the woods and I turn a corner and there's a bear. Right? And it has a cub. So there's a mama bear and a cub. And suddenly, you know, I'm 15 feet away. That's fear. The fear is a reaction to something that's actually present. And then there's a fight-flight response in the body, and your body releases hormones and gets ready to either run really fast or defend yourself because you're under actual threat. Fear is a response to an actual threat that you're perceiving, right? Mm-hmm. Anxiety is a response to something that might happen in the future. So I'm walking in the woods and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, you know, black bears live in Pennsylvania woods sometimes. And oh my gosh, I've heard that, you know, even a black bear, like they can outrun you. And, you know, we couldn't possibly, you know, defeat it. And oh my gosh, what if that one had a cub with them? And all these things are running through my mind. I'm in the woods are empty, I can, you know, say the trees are sparse, I can see really far, but my whole day is being ruined by the fact that I'm just playing in my mind all these scenarios that might happen. That's anxiety. And then, so that leads to a number of questions like, well, am I anxious about something that's likely? Am I anxious about something that is a 1 in a million, but I'm spending my whole day worrying about it, even though it's a 1 in a million? Some of the research, well, the bulk of the research, now my information's a little old. I haven't been in grad school for psychology for a little while. But one of the people on my dissertation committee, I have a master's, I'm all but dissertation. One of the people on my dissertation committee was a huge anxiety researcher. They mainly worked in generalized anxiety disorder. And one comment they made one day, you know, we were chatting, is that about 95% of the things that are the things that these people with diagnosable anxiety disorders worry about, 95% of them never happen. That's a really powerful thing to think about. So usually as humans, when we get anxious, when we tend to have an anxious approach to life, the vast majority of the things we spend our time worrying about and getting worked up about never happen.
Never happen, right.
All right. So
Well,
that's
if they never happen, then why do we get so,
exactly
twisted up about it? Because
Yes.
in my family, it was like, well, it's probably not going to happen. My mom was she used to worry about everything. I mean, she perfected it. And we were like, Mom, it's not going to happen. And she's like, well, how do you know it's not going to happen?
right.
So what is the attraction there of getting so tangled up in it?
Right. That's the next logical question. So, anxiety basically can come from two places. One is we could have experiences in life that make life feel scary and threatening. So think of the person who's, maybe they've been through combat situations in war and they have PTSD. Life has been genuinely threatening, right? Fear of a real present threat, the threat of death, in war, has caused their brain to say the world is a really scary place that offers genuine threats. And those experiences could be so strong that they overwhelm the system to an extent, and the system gets stuck in, if you imagine the needle on the meter is going up to red, and it gets pegged to red in these experiences, and the needle gets stuck there. And now the person is trying to live in the regular world, but their internal system is screaming,
got it.
Threat, threat, threat. There's scary things right here, even though they're no longer in that circumstance.
Wow.
Now, that's the extreme case. That's the PTSD case. But we can now that we can think about that clearly, think about more regular threatening, scary situations. Sometimes it's a childhood experience. Let's say the person got bit by a dog when they were a child, and now they're afraid of dogs every time they encounter dogs. Their mind has associated dogs with a genuine damaging threat.
Yeah.
And it then applies that to every dog the person encounters, because the mind is saying, I'm trying to stay alive here. I've decided that dogs are genuinely threatening to my life, and therefore when I see dogs, I'm going to go into fight flight because that's what I've learned. They're dangerous creatures. Okay. So and then of course there's sadder versions of this, people that have lost their parents when they were very young. It's very common to develop chronic anxiety through life because the loss of a parent, the caretaker when you're very young, leads to the feeling that life in security and protection and safety is unsure. And that leads to an anxiety because the child really needs their parents in many ways, especially when they're very little. And if the parents go away, I'm in a lot of danger. If you think of kind of from a nature perspective, you really need your parents to be there when you're little and vulnerable. And that can lead to things. So what I'm saying is there's experiences that can lead to a generalizing of the anxiety state to the rest of life. The other one is a brain kind of set point, right? Some people, anxiety runs in their family.
Yes.
They haven't necessarily had scary experiences.
Right.
But they're prone to anxiety because everybody's brain is a little different, right?
Right.
And this person might have just the little meter, going back to that meter analogy, the little needle on the meter is stuck at yellow, and that's just where their brain is. It's stuck in the yellow level. So I have low-grade chronic anxiety. But it's not coming from anything in particular, right? So what does the brain do then? The brain tries to make sense of its experience. The brain is saying like, well, there must be something scary or threatening here because I'm in that mode. I'm in fight flight. I'm trying to stay alive. But what is it? Like, I feel it. I'm in that mode, but there is no actual threat. So what the mind does, and it does this in many different areas, it tries to make sense of that. So it says, well, what's in my environment? Well, this thing's in my environment. I must be afraid of that. That thing must be scary. And it links the anxiety to something to make sense of it, to kind of ground the anxiety in something. And so if your brain set point is just there, you can end up kind of being anxious about everything. And this can be the person that ends up agoraphobic and can't leave the house because they worry about every possible scenario that might happen if I leave my house. Because their brain is trying to link its anxiety to something. Okay, so experiences can lead to anxiety, life becomes threatening, or things like the dog that bit me become threatening, or my brain can be set there. Now, you either treat that with therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, which we could talk about. If your brain set point is at yellow, it's really helpful to try the medications that we have found that work really well to get the needle to come back down to green, because the brain is just set there, and we may not be able to talk therapy our way into the brain changing because it's a biological set point. So, and then sometimes both, mild medication plus talk therapy. But we do want to address it, right? Not just live with it, because it's an unrealistic thing, again, when it comes to worry. 95% of these things never happen, and it limits our life. So the extreme case I mentioned, the agoraphobic, eventually doesn't leave the house. That really limits your life, right? Your joyful experiences, your experience of life. And in other ways, anxiety can limit our lives. So ideally, we want to address it and fix it as much as we can so that we can enjoy life and live fully.
So I have even more respect now for the saints, because they obviously, did that. They worked on it hard because they had these things. Either it was brought in from their families, because if you look at some of the saints, you can trace it back to their family origin and the way they were raised, and they had parents that worried as well, and so they really mastered it. They really built this relationship with God early on, so that they could stay way above all of these fears and anxieties and scrupulosity and all sorts of things. That's amazing. So I have the utmost respect for them, because it's tough, Adam, especially when you're born into a family of people that worry. It's tough to break free of it, because it becomes the natural rhythm of the family.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. This is fascinating what you're talking about. I feel like you're just talking to me. It's a tough thing. Okay, let's go back to Keith. He's got some announcements, and then he'll flip it back to us for the final segment of The Next Right Thing.
I was just going to say, he's talking about me too. I don't know. This has been very interesting. But yes, real quick, just wanted to make sure everybody's really well aware that Saturday, July 19th is the Guadalupe Radio Network's 25th anniversary celebration, Keeping the Promise. Now, as I mentioned, July 19th, it's in Plano, Texas, and the best part of it all is that it's 100% free. Like, this event is free. There's so many great names, including the ones and the voices you just heard, Debbie and Adam, and so much more. We recommend going to the website grnonline.com/anniversary for all things, and make sure to register. But coming up next, we're continuing the conversation with Debbie and Adam. Don't go anywhere.
Listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Many Protestants believe Christians can be absolutely sure they're going to heaven because John tells us in 1 John 5:13, I write this that you may know you have eternal life. But is this true? The answer is no, and here are some reasons why. First, John writes in the next verse, and this is the confidence which we have in him. For John, the knowledge we have of our salvation is not a certainty without doubt, but a confident assurance. And that's the Catholic belief. Second, we know this is what John means because in verse 15, he draws a parallel between our knowledge of salvation and our knowledge that God grants our requests. Do we have absolute certitude that God will grant our requests? No, but we are confident he will answer. So, Catholics need not worry. John is not teaching Protestant doctrine here. I'm Carlo Broussard with the ready reason for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
This program is sponsored in part by St. Candles. Founded by a music executive to comfort a friend diagnosed with a life-threatening illness, the St. Candle collection has grown to more than 25 candles. Each modern candle is handmade with a prayer coin inside and dedicated to a patron saint. St. Raphael for healing, St. Philomena for children, St. Anthony of Padua, and many more as well. To see what St. Candles are available, visit stcandles.com.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey. And hey, speaking of truth matters, a quick update. This just in, the news that we had earlier about Cardinal Sarah having this new role, that is still being confirmed, has yet to be confirmed. So just wanted to reiterate that some things tend to float around on Facebook that might not be true. So we'll keep you in the loop regardless. Want to shout out Nicole out there, our joyful pilgrim warriors, for helping us figure that one out. But continuing the conversation, though, on anxiety, we've got Debbie and Adam. Take it away.
But, Keith, you make a good point about social media. There's a lot of things that float on social media, Adam, that really can cause a lot of worry and anxiety. And you start going down that rabbit hole of chasing it, thinking that it's something that's really happening when it's, AI generated and it seems so real and people are picking it up and running with it. It can be tough, Adam. I think social media tends to really promote fear and anxiety. What do you say?
Oh my gosh, so much. So think about it. When you want to manipulate a person, right? And sales, selling anything is a form of manipulation. Advertising is basically just one big, perfecting manipulation. That's really what it's doing, right? I want to motivate this person to give me some of their money. Well, if I never talk with them or interact with them or send them a letter or do anything, the chances of this person giving me money is basically zero, that they're going to randomly find me, online and just send me $5. So I've got to interact with them in some way. How do you get a person's attention and motivate them to click on something, to subscribe to something, to whatever? Well, you basically have to offer them one of two things. You have to offer them what's called eustress, EU stress, which is positive stress, meaning like something great's going to happen if you click on this. You have a chance to, you can gamble online and you have a chance to have a jackpot and win lots of money. That's a positive, strong experience you're offering the person and trying to convince them that might happen, even though that's, 1,000,000 to 1. You're basically not going to get rich gambling online. You're going to lose all your money, just like when you go to casinos, eventually you're going to lose all your money because the odds are against you. If you keep playing, guaranteed you'll be broke.
The house always wins.
The house always wins. So if I want to motivate you, I need to offer you something positive, or I need to scare you with something negative.
Negative, right. Got it.
Now, here's the weird thing. We tend to be, in our thinking, a little more realistic about the positive. Most people. So if I say, you could win the lottery, most of us are like, yeah, like you kind of you get that little tiny twitch of a burst of excitement, but then really. super quickly you're like, it comes crashing down and you're like, what the odds of that are like 1,000,000,000 to 1. That friggin' not going to happen. Millions of people do that every day. It never works. So we kind of, when it comes to offering the positive as a manipulation, we tend to be a little more realistic about it. Now, if you offer the negative and say, oh my gosh, this horrible thing's going to happen in a few months. You need to click here and learn about it so you can avoid this disaster.
I'm clicking.
I'm clicking, right.
Right.
Because when it comes to threats, we tend to be less realistic.
Right, got it.
So if I offer you a positive that's basically not going to happen, I tend to be somewhat realistic about it, and the odds of me running out and playing the lottery and blowing my bank account on it, thinking that I'm realistically going to win so it's worth emptying my bank account, almost nobody's going to do that. But when it comes to fear, we tend to shut off the rational mind a little bit because the fight-flight starts to kick in. And when fight-flight kicks in and when the hormones kick in, we tend to think less. So if you've ever been in a situation where you're genuinely physically threatened by something and you had to physically fight off, say, an animal was attacking you or a person attacked you, some genuine thing, the rational mind tends to shut down and you tend to go into more of a primitive mode where you're really trying to keep your body alive. You're fighting for your life. It's a very different mode. You're not intellectually processing, what is the best way to deal with this bear that's attacking me? You're just fighting for your life. Okay. So advertising and us humans have figured out long ago that it's more motivating to scare you, to try to motivate you to do something, than it is to offer you, some unrealistic goodie. And so social media, the internet, advertising, a lot of it is about fear. If you just look at the evening news, which no longer exists, it's all streaming, but if you look at the news, it's like 98% of the stories are this horrible thing happened, and these things broke over here, and this horrible threat is happening, and it might be near you. Because that gets your eyeball on it, because you're saying, oh, there's a threat out there in the world. I need to be aware of it so I can keep myself safe.
So doom and gloom sells.
It does, because it gets our attention. Now, the sad thing is, people talk about doom scrolling on their phone, just going from, one horrible quick story to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And it can lead to this unrealistic anxiety. Again, where we opened, right? 95% or more of the things people worry about never happen. Well, if you believe your phone, the sky is falling every week. And World War III is happening tomorrow, and you need to blow all your money on prepper goods and freeze-dried food and, build a nuclear bomb shelter, et cetera, like every day. Yet, here we still are. Right? Could bad things happen? Yes. But what are the odds of them? They're usually infinitesimally small when it comes to these huge bad things. And so the challenge when you have anxiety is to go out in the world, continue to live, press on, do what you need to do, and trust God in the midst of that. Like, okay, Lord, I don't know how many days I have on this earth, which is true, none of us do, but I'm going to get up anyway, and I'm going to do my best, and I'm going to work hard, I'm going to try to be positive, I'm going to try to share a godly approach to life, a charitable, loving approach with as many people as possible. And whatever time you're giving me. And I let go of that anxiety. That's one of the gifts of religion, and specifically Christianity, because what's the primary anxiety? Freud would tell us, at the heart of it all is death, right? Right. So we all have a primary anxiety of, I'm going to die someday. Yep. And that is, in terms of fight, flight, and the body wanting to live, it's like the biggest thing. If I can say Christ defeated death, and I know where I'm going after I die, and it's not just into oblivion, I can then kind of set that aside and apply myself to life joyfully.
Yeah. Absolutely. You nailed it. This was excellent. And I hope that our Morning Joy listeners take this segment and share it with friends who are struggling with fears and anxiety. But Adam, I just wanted to say this, go back to the saints. Many of the saints struggled with anger and fear and scrupulosity, different anxieties that maybe they had to deal with at different times. St. Francis de Sales, who also struggled with some things, he said, the famous quote, God commands us to pray and forbids us to worry. He commands us to pray and forbids us to worry. So that's powerful. I just wanted to say that's the reason why we look at the lives of the saints, so that we don't feel so alone in our struggles, right? They did it, they mastered it, and they made it to heaven, and we can too. So that's it for the Next Right Thing. Adam, thank you so much. God willing, I'll see you tomorrow, and we're going to send it back to our incredible host, Keith Downey, for the rest of Morning Joy.
Oh, you're far too kind. My anxiety just went down a bit there. Thanks again, though, Debbie and Adam. Make sure to catch them every single Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m. Eastern for The Spirit World. So, yes, they also not only do every single weekday The Next Right Thing, but they also jump on Saturday mornings just for you. And this coming week, because the following Monday will be Memorial Day, they're going to be talking about servant leadership. So make sure to tune in this coming Saturday. It's a live show, so that means you can also call in. A really great opportunity to ask them questions all about angels, demons, and everything between. You can also catch them on the podcasting platforms, right? So not only on the radio, but also on, say, Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Just search The Spirit World or the Spirit World podcasts, and you'll find them on social media too. Coming up next, though, we're going to be switching gears a little bit. Instead of talking about anxiety, we're going to be talking about peace through the eyes of St. Thomas Aquinas. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.